Okay, we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. So while you're waiting, if you will scan the QR code on your screen, it may give you some trouble. Just take your camera app out and scan that code and get started on that survey, and we'll wait on other folks to log in. I think we're having some trouble getting this survey to pop up. So if you'll just hold tight for just a second and we'll let a couple other people jump on. All right, we are going to get started. There's a link in the chat to complete this survey. So if you go there, it's the second link that I posted. So I'm just responding to a message in the chat. Okay. So we got started a few minutes late. I think some folks were trying to jump on, so we were trying to give them plenty of time to get started up here. So welcome. We are happy to have you here. This is our third and final career seminar on interviewing and managing anxiety. So I'm Laura Walker Andrews. I'm a counselor here at Blue Ridge, and I'll be talking with you today about how to interview and how to manage anxiety when that comes up surrounding your interview. So we'll get started. And again, you're free to work on that survey link, the second link posted in the chat. Okay, so I've also got Vic Sloan with me today. He presented with me on our first career seminar on finding your career path. So he's going to share with you some student perspective on interviewing a little bit later. So here's what we have planned for today. We're going to be talking about how to prepare for an interview, what you should remember, also telephone and video interviews. So those are becoming quite popular, especially with COVID-19 and how that's transpired in employment throughout the last few months. We're also going to talk about some practice questions along with what to wear, what to take with you, what to ask. We're going to talk about the thank you note, and then our last agenda item will be managing anxiety. So feel free throughout this to post any questions you might have. So congratulations, you have an interview. So now what are you supposed to do? So preparing for the interview, you want to learn as much as you possibly can about the employer that you're going to interview with. So this can be very valuable information to you, and you can learn so much about what a workplace might look like, who you might be working with, things of that nature. learn about the job that you're interviewing for. So we recently had a counselor opening here at Blue Ridge, and the person we hired, he knew about who he was going to be working with and what that job entailed. So he knew exactly which programs he'd be advising and registering students and providing that wraparound support that we provide to the students in our programs. And so that was very appealing to our supervisor. So he ended up getting the job. Do a practice interview if possible. So you will want to practice with a friend or maybe a mentor, teacher, anybody that will let you do a practice interview would be beneficial, just so you can get comfortable with that interview format. So it can be a little bit awkward if you've never been one-on-one with somebody and you're sitting in front of them and you may be like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, what am I doing? So get a little bit comfortable in that type of setting. Prepare questions to ask. So we're going to talk a lot about this later, but people like when you ask questions. So I have rarely ever gone into an interview with no questions, because they want to see that you're engaged in what you're doing and that you're genuinely interested in the job. Be familiar with the location of the interview. So this was one I remember thinking was kind of silly, because I am pretty good about where things are located, but it can also be really tricky. So my interview I came to here at Blue Ridge, I had to go to a specific building and a specific room number that they told me to go to. So those little details can be very specific, and you want to make sure that you know where you're going, and that can also help alleviate any of the anxiety you're feeling on the morning or afternoon of your interview. Prepare a thank you note to send afterward. So I'm a big believer in a handwritten thank you note. You can also do a thank you email, and we're going to talk about both of those a little later on. But prepping it beforehand, that can be one less thing for you to do later. So moving on to things to remember. So you obviously want to remember the name of the position that you're interviewing for. So you don't want to go into an interview thinking that you are interviewing for a clerk position, but you're actually interviewing for a management position. So try to keep track of what the position you're interviewing for is called. Remember the interviewer's name. So they're going to be calling you or emailing you to try to schedule a time to meet with you. So make sure that you remember their name. That little detail can go a long way. Take a copy of your resume. So rarely has it happened that I needed to provide a copy of a resume, but there's always this little thought in my head that says, well, they might ask me for it. Maybe somebody misplaced it that morning. So you want to take it with you just as a buffer, so that if they do ask you, you're not fumbling around, oh, I don't have that with me. So make sure you take that with you. Sit up straight when you interview. So oftentimes we can get really comfortable with slouching or, looking like we're kind of just hanging out. But you want to sit up straight and make sure that you are presenting yourself in the best light possible. Give a firm handshake. So this one's really important, to make sure that you're giving a good solid shake of the hand. This is probably one that people have stopped doing in the meantime, because it spreads germs, and we're very adamant about not doing that right now. But if things ever go back to the firm handshake model, just be prepared not to do like a fishy hand or whatever it is. Make good eye contact with your interviewer. So try to look straight on at the person. It can be a little bit of an anxiety provoking thing, but it's also weird if you're looking everywhere else except for the person. Take 2 forms of identification with you. So if you drove there, hopefully you have your license with you, and make sure that you take something else. This is so that if they decide to hire you on the spot, you can get all that initial paperwork taken care of then, and you're not having to go home and come back. So take it with you and be prepared, because you're going to dazzle them with how great you are. Turn your cell phone off. So I remember being a little bit sketchy about this one too, but I was in a class in college one time, and I swear to you, my phone was on silent, and that thing went off in class, and I couldn't find it to turn it off. And it was probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. So even though your cell phone is on silent, it can still go off, and I'm a testament to that. So you will want to at least turn it off for the interview. I've started keeping it in my car so that I don't even have to worry about it. But that's all up to you. But you definitely don't want it ringing during the interview, and you certainly do not want to answer that call during the interview. But you will be surprised of people who do that. All right, what to wear. So a lot of this can toe the line of being a little bit judgy about appearance. So I just want to point out, your interview, you want to put your best foot forward. And some work environments are very specific about you not having certain things, like body jewelry, tattoos, or wearing certain types of garments. Especially the factory or manufacturing environments are very particular about these types of things. So this is not to say that, these things are bad. You just want to make sure that when you're interviewing, that you are presenting your best self that you can. So you want to make sure your clothes are clean and that they're freshly pressed. Now, I'm not a fan of an iron, but get you some wrinkle release spray and, just make sure you're looking sharp. Clean your shoes. So some people will go to an interview with some dirty shoes, like clearly they've been out in the mud. Make sure your shoes are clean, because that is a big negative right there. Use cosmetics and fragrances lightly. So I always thought this was a bit of a bougie type of thing, but my parents were very particular about not wearing loud fragrances. I believe my parents have some kind of allergy, or, little weird. I'm the same way with some strong scents. So you just want to keep it on the lower scale. Like, don't douse yourself with Axe that morning. Like, do a couple sprays and you're good. Avoid any loud fashions or bright colors. So just making sure that when you come into the room, they're not like blinded by your highlighter yellow outfit. Just keep it more conservative for the interview. Take out body jewelry if necessary. So especially if you have facial piercings, you may want to consider taking those out for the interview, and cover any visible tattoos. Maybe you wear a blazer or whatever it is. So just a couple of points. Again, not to judge individualism, but just putting that best foot forward. Okay, some do's and don'ts. So obviously you do want to take a shower, and you do want to shave and trim your facial hair, wash your hair. Those are all great starting points. Use your deodorant. Very important, especially, guys, if you're wearing dress shirts or whatever, be aware pit stains are a thing, especially in the summer. So use your deodorant. Remember to brush your teeth and clean and trim your fingernails. So that can be important, especially with the handshake of the old times, making sure that everything is clean and neat. So again, you want to keep your perfume and your cologne to a minimum, and not wear loud or flashy clothes. And don't forget to assess your jewelry and tattoos. So again, that's all based on the work environment. You go to restaurants in Asheville and, we see tattoos and jewelry everywhere. But if you're at a factory environment, especially on your hands, they don't want you to wear rings for very good reason. So those are some quick do's and don'ts. So do try to arrive 15 minutes early. This is so that you are prepared, especially they may decide to call you back early. So you get a little bit of buffer time. Be aware of your body language. This goes back to the slumping, make sure you're standing up straight and just presenting yourself in a good light and not getting too comfortable, putting your feet up on the table or whatever, which leads to keep your feet on the floor. Carry a pen with you. So when we talked about taking 2 forms of identification, you'll want to carry a pen with you in order to be prepared to fill out any paperwork. And do be positive. So it can be really tricky, especially if you really need a job, to start going into that negative mindset. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get into managing anxiety. Don't chew gum during your interview. So I may pop that in to get the breath nice and fresh, so I'm not sharing my stank with people. But you'll want to spit that out before you go in. Don't bring others with you. So it can just kind of look like that you're, unable to be independent. Don't swing or tap your foot. That can be really hard for people who got to be moving all the time. Those folks in class that get their leg going and, just try to stay still and answer their questions. And don't smoke beforehand. So that obviously can leave an odor, especially if you don't pop in a mint or do the perfume. And that can be a hard one, especially if you're anxious. But just try to stay away from the tobacco until after the fact. Or all the time. That too. Okay, let's get into some practice questions. So one of the age-old favorites is, tell me about yourself. So with this question, you will want to start out just telling, there's a couple different ways you can go about it. Some people choose to walk folks through their educational background or where they worked before. So those are definitely things that they're going to want to hear from you. You can also, if you've done some research about the company, you can use this question to try to appeal to the person you're talking to. So sometimes in my initial research, I have figured out that someone is from Tennessee and so am I. So I mentioned that so we have an initial connection that builds from there. What are your career goals? So you want to be honest here, especially if you are a high school student or going into college. Maybe you're not ready for that first adult job. So they're asking you this in genuine interest of what you're going to be doing later. How have your education and work experience prepared you for this job? So again, you want to fall back on your education and your work experience and tie that to the job that you're looking at interviewing for. What do you consider your strengths and weaknesses? This is another age-old interview question, and there are a couple different tactics that you can use. With your strengths, don't be shy about it. Talk with a friend beforehand, especially if you're having trouble identifying those strengths. In regard to your weaknesses, a lot of people will advise you to term your weaknesses in a way that can be a strength. So that tends to work really well. So instead of saying, I lose track of time and don't complete my work task, you might say, I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and I sometimes get lost in it. So that sounds a whole lot different than I just lose track of time and I don't do what I'm supposed to. Instead, I'm hearing, oh, this person's really passionate and engaged in what they're doing. I may want to hire them. So really think about how you present the weaknesses, and you don't ever want to say you don't have any. People don't like that. You want to, share at least one that you've been able to identify and reframe. What motivates you to put forth your best effort? So think about, are you motivated internally? Are you motivated by people? That's the time to share, what type of manager you want to have. So that can be very valuable information. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is also an interview question that is talked about a lot. You want to be honest here as much as you can, but if you're interviewing for your first adult job, you want to be careful to frame this in a way that they're looking for longevity. So they don't want people who are just coming and going. They want to know you're going to stick around. So that can be a tricky one to know how to frame. Why do you want to work for this company? Be honest, be positive. This is where your research, you can fall back on that and state, if you know that they have a mission of helping people in the community, add that here. What did you like and dislike about your last job? This is similar to the strengths and weaknesses question. So with the dislikes, you want to be careful about not being too honest. So you don't want to say, well, I hated my boss. They don't want to hear that because they know that's a red flag. Think about how you can reframe the dislikes to go along with what you do like about your last job. What courses did you like best in school? This may be one that you hear a lot, especially if you're still in school. They want to know what you're studying, so they'll try to engage with you on that. How would your last supervisor or teacher describe you? So think about how those folks would describe you in a positive light. So you'll want to mention positive attributes that you have so that you can dazzle them with your characteristics. Why should I hire you for this job? So this one is your chance to really showcase why they should hire you. So name off all those positive things and great things about you. What was the reason for your lapse in employment? So this might be one that they ask, especially, once you start having jobs, they will ask you that if there is a lapse. Sometimes it's due to, like, I know many people in education who they may, lose a job when the school year ends in June, but then they have one again in August. So you'll just want to mention, that was a temporary position, or, I took some time off to care for my family, or whatever that is. So they're just wanting to know what your reasoning was, and not that you were, sitting at home eating bonbons. What to ask the employer. So we talked about you want to have questions ready for them. When they ask, do you have any questions? Never say no. You always have a question. So what qualities are necessary to succeed in this job? Excuse me. So you will want to try to find out what exactly they're looking for. And you'll want to, any of these questions we're talking about, make sure that you mention how you can be in this work environment. So on this one, what qualities are necessary after they answer? You want to say, well, actually, I have great time management and I've been able to work part-time and go to school. So I'm really proud of my time management skills. So try to tie their answer into what you've got working for you. Describe your management style / work environment. This one can be really helpful to try to figure out how your prospective boss operates. I like to ask this question because it helps me figure out, what exactly, what's the day-to-day going to look like? Is this person going to micromanage, or are they going to, give me a little bit of, some independence where I can operate alone, or is it more of like a group collaborative effort? So it can give you a lot of insight into how your manager works, which can be helpful. What does a typical workday look like? This is also one I like to ask, and 9 times out of 10, people will say, oh, there's really no typical workday. Like, typical doesn't exist. So you want to ask this in a way where they're actually going to answer it. So when they give you that, there's no typical workday, what are the things that you see a lot of? Like, what are you doing most of the time? What challenges would present themselves in this job? So maybe you're stepping into a situation where the previous person may not have done the best job. So you want to be prepared for those types of challenges. We mentioned education. So if you're a teacher coming in, following the last teacher, you're going to have to collaborate with your other educators and learn who people are. So this can be great insight into that. What does the training process look like? So that's really important to figure out, is your boss going to be training you? Is a coworker training you? Or are you going to be left to your own devices? You'll want to see, are there any technologies, like trainings that are set up? So if you're, working at a retail store, they may have trainings already set up for you. So this can give you some good insight into, are you going to be just thrown to the wolves, or are you going to be able to kind of get your feet on the ground and move forward from there? How do you measure employee performance or provide feedback? So that can be helpful just to know up front, how are they going to be measuring your performance, and when are they going to give you feedback? So those things can be really valuable, especially later on in your career, knowing those things. Does your company support training and professional development? So a lot of jobs, they will be able to provide training and professional development to, other trainings across the state or things of that nature. So that may be one that you ask just to figure out, is all the training at the company itself? Or are you able to do online training, travel for training, any of that? What urgent needs do you see upon filling this position? So in the past, when I've asked this, my job and my career has been very student focused. And so they usually tell me, you're coming in after someone and you're going to have to get to know a lot of people. You're going to have to get to know the students that you're going to be working with. So those are all urgent needs that they will let you know about, so that you're prepared when you do come into the job, you know what to expect. What is the next step in the interview process? So this can give you an idea of what to expect moving forward. Do they still have more interviews, or are they about to make a decision? When do you hope to fill this position? So this is a very concrete way of asking, when am I going to find out if I got this or not? Okay. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to let Vic Sloan talk a little bit about his student interview experience, just so you have an idea of what someone else has been through. So Vic, take it away.
All right. Just to piggyback off some of the key that you mentioned, being well dressed and engaged in the interview is always key. Being conversational when you've been asked a question about either past work experience or things that you are interested in. I believe the employer would like to know those things to get to know you personally, so they can figure out how you fit into their organization, their job field. Another thing I would say is just kind of be yourself. Not yourself at home, but when you're talking to them, you're getting to ask questions. The more they ask you questions, just stay engaged and just continue to give them feedback on like who you are and what type of things interest you about the job. And like Laura mentioned, always ask questions to find out what the job entails, if you fit into it, if it's something that you can see yourself doing long term. Because at the end of the day, it's a career path, or it's a door that's open to a career path. So I think all those things are key, and really just making sure that you put your best foot forward and give all the input, and the time that you use during the interview, that's your personal time with the interviewer. So that's really something that you should really stay engaged in, and like I said, put your best foot forward in that. As far as my personal experiences, as far as a resume, um, you should always update your resume if you have something on there, even if you haven't done a new job or got another job. Things that you do, clubs, social events that you're part of, things outside of school or work, like recycling, if you do things like that, if you have something that you do personally, even if it's not an organization, those things are key to them identifying with who you can be for their company. So those are briefly just a few of the things that I I take as important to being in an interview. And like I said, those things are gonna help someone get to know you and see where you fit into their company.
All right, so some really great insight for you. I think that Vic really took it home with, the interview is about, discovering if you're a right fit for a place. And when you're desperate for a job, it can be really difficult to, focus more on, I just need a job. Like, I don't really care where I am or who I'm with. But ultimately, that's what they're searching for. So it's within your personality and who you are. So you want to make sure that you let them know who that is. So it can be really difficult to feel comfortable in that situation, but you do, want to try to give an accurate read on who you are as a person, so they know whether you fit in with the rest of their workers and the atmosphere. So thanks, Vic, for that. So we're going to talk about telephone and video interviews. So as we said, with COVID-19 happening, some employers are moving more towards these types of interviews. In the past, there have been some companies that I've interviewed with where they do like 2 phone interviews before you go into face-to-face. And a lot of places are doing video interviews. I know that Blue Ridge has been using that even before COVID-19 happened. So these are ways that they can try to weed out interviewees before they actually have to bring anybody on campus or to their place of employment. So again, you want to make sure that you're prepared. Have your resume the job description and your questions ready to go. So you want to have that all with you. I would recommend, if you can get like a nice Padfolio to take that with you, or even just a folder, if you're looking for your first job, taking just a folder of all that stuff, just so you have it all in one place. Keep your company facts nearby if you need them. So if you're on this phone interview, have those facts that you found nearby so that you can plug those in when you can. So the phone interview or a video interview can be a good way to still keep some of those things with you, but you don't have to be obvious about looking at it. So obviously face-to-face, if you take your company facts, it can be kind of hard to check over those again. But on the phone especially, you're able to keep those out and plug those things in when you can. Practice giving examples prior to the interview. So since you're not there in person, they're not able to read body language as much, especially if you're on the phone, it's all voice related. So not having any of that, you'll want to make sure you're giving examples and telling stories. So this is a good tip anyway, regardless of the type of interview, but especially if you're on the phone, you're not able to read faces or body language, which can be difficult for them to follow sometimes. Keep a notepad and pen to write down the person interviewing you. So if I know that I'm interviewing with Charlotte at 3 p.m., I'm going to write that down so that I remember Charlotte is the person that I talked to. If there's another person that comes on, or maybe it's a panel interview, you'll want to jot those things down too, which we're going to talk about here in a second. Have your calendar ready just in case they want to schedule an in-person interview. So however you keep your calendar, whether that's in a planner or if you have it on your phone, make sure you have it ready to go or easy to access so that you can schedule that follow-up interview that we know you're going to get. Be present. So if you're on the phone or video, making sure that you're free of distractions. So your little brother's bedroom is not really the best place to do that. Maybe try to find a quieter spot in the house. Make sure everybody knows what you're doing so that, mom doesn't come in and, hey, honey, did you pick up your underwear from the laundry? So making sure you're minimizing distractions in all seriousness. Speak directly into the phone. So I know it can be hard to position the phone in such a way where your voice projects, but try to keep it, close to your mouth. Don't go on speakerphone, or sometimes those headphones can be difficult with the Bluetooth linkage. People are kind of hard to hear. So try to use your actual phone if you can. Avoid saying and ah. So I just said not really the best example of that. Keep it to a minimum. It can be difficult to do, but once you practice it enough, you will find that it is possible. Try to stand during the interview. So this is something I didn't know, but voices project better when you're standing. So if you're sitting down, you may be prone to having your voice kind of go into just a lower register. So if you're standing, walking around, not jogging, but walking around, you can have your voice project a little better. Be enthusiastic and smile as you talk. So it can feel kind of cheesy, but if you smile when you talk, that comes through over the phone. So you don't sound, lethargic, like you need to go back to bed. But if you're smiling, it can really project through the phone or the video and come off as very positive. Ask for clarification when needed. This can be a little bit awkward, especially if the phone, may go out, or your internet connection may skip or something like that. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification because you want to make sure that you're answering the questions that they had for you. And again, ask supplemental questions. So don't just take everything they say. Make sure you're asking them questions as well. Group interview. So sometime you may interview with a large group of people. This is particularly true in higher education. You may have a committee of people that you're meeting with. So make sure that you're prepared to do that. So when you go into the room, if it's face-to-face or if it's video, greet every person in that room like you're meeting them for the first time, and don't leave anybody out of that. So you want each person in the room to feel like you're welcoming them to talking with you. You may even be asked to interview with other applicants who may be interviewing for the same position or a similar position. So do be prepared for that. I have had that happen before where they were looking to hire a couple of folks. So they had, one or two other people in with me so that they're, maximizing their time. In those situations, you want to make sure that you stay calm and collected and that you are showing your personality and speaking up in that group. Okay, the thank you note. So it may seem old school, but it's a nice touch. Again, prepare your notes beforehand. So you may want to just get a pack of thank you cards the next time you're at Walmart or whatever. And that way you can have those on hand to mail out right after your interview. So written versus email. If you're doing a written thank you note, address it beforehand, and then you can drop it in the mail on your way home. So this just is a way for you to go ahead and put that as a part of your preparation for the interview, and then drop it in the mail so you don't have to worry about it. Use your same etiquette for a handwritten note as you would in the email. We'll talk about those thank you notes in the email shortly. And wait until the following morning to send a thank you email. So it can look a little persistent if you do it the same day, so just wait till the next morning to follow up with them there. So this is an example of what a thank you note looks like. And this just says, I'm sending you a sincere thanks for meeting with me. It was a pleasure. I really hope to hear from you about this position. This one's a little bit more formal, but you will want to follow the body of this just to say, nice to meet you, and I'm glad we had time to talk about this job. There are tons of templates on the internet, so if you want to Google thank you note template, you'll be able to find it. But just something really short and sweet like, thank you for meeting with me, and try to tie in a detail from the interview. So if you connected on the fact that you're both from Tennessee, plug that in there, and then they'll remember, oh, that was Laura I talked to. Okay, we're going to get into the anxiety piece. So just know that interview anxiety is something that is very common in almost everyone. So even before these presentations, I get a little bit anxious, but once I'm able to get on and meet with you all, it gets a little bit easier. And it'll get easier for you over time. So don't get caught up in feeling anxious because it's very, very normal. So anxiety is characterized by persistent and excessive worry about all different kinds of things. So our minds are made up of having one thought and then just spiraling from there. So we want to talk about how to keep that more in check. So you may anticipate disaster and you may be overly conscious about a lot of different things. And we'll talk about different ways that you can alleviate some of that. Automatic thoughts, they are something called catastrophizing. I can't even say it, but it's from the word catastrophe, which means that your mind is creating catastrophes just constantly if you're dealing with anxiety. Okay, so I've got a video here. It is maybe 3 or 4 minutes. So we'll watch that. Can you guys hear that? No. Okay. Well, since we are at 12:23, I'm just going to move on, but I will post this link for you in the chat. Okay. So take a time out, practice yoga or meditate. There are tons of apps that you can use. So Insight Timer and Headspace are two that I've heard are highly recommended. You can also listen to music or learn relaxation techniques to step back from the problem. Breathing can do a lot with that. So just inhaling, exhaling, just kind of taking a minute. So I know the breathing kind of helps me if I need to just take a time out. So feel free to do that if you need to. It's a very valuable tool. Make sure you're eating well-balanced meals. So sometimes anxiety can become even more so if your diet is a little bit off. So make sure you're doing that and limiting alcohol and caffeine, because those things can certainly trigger anxiety. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. And sleeping, if you feel tired and are able to sleep, do that. They do recommend 8 hours a night for most adults. If you're a little bit on the younger side, you probably want to move towards 10, maybe even 12. So taking care of your body in that way and making sure you're getting enough sleep can be really important. Exercising daily. So making sure that you just get a little bit of exercise, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Those can be little details that can help you with managing your health in a good way. So we talked about taking deep breaths. So inhaling and exhaling slowly, count to 10, repeat if you need to. So breathing techniques can be very important to help you with managing that interview anxiety. Get involved. So if you have enough time to volunteer or connect in the community, this can help relieve some stress that you might have. Do your best instead of aiming for perfection. So again, kind of going back to what Vic was saying about being true to yourself, accept that you can't control everything, but try to keep a positive attitude and have a little humor about it. Learn what triggers your anxiety. So you may learn of certain situations that makes your anxiety worse. So sometimes it can be specific people, sometimes it can be specific things you talk about, or a certain room, certain place, things like that. So once you know that, that's valuable information on how to manage your anxiety. Write in your journal if you're able to. Take some notes, doodle on your Padfolio you're going to buy and go interview with. So here's some more details about exercising. So it goes really in depth about, how many hours you might want to look at and things of that nature. But ultimately, that last point about just aiming for daily consistency. So trying to find a time, for you to go out and do what you enjoy. So whether it's walking or dancing, playing football, any of those things, make sure that you're making it a habit. It's just a good way for you to manage not only your physical health, but your mental health as well. So again, do what's fun. You can distract yourself. I know I like to put on an audiobook or some music if I'm walking by myself. You can also recruit an exercise buddy. So if you need someone to hold you accountable, that would be great. And be patient. So it can sometimes take some time in order to get those endorphins flowing from the exercise. So I want to get ready to end here. So if you're noticing that anxiety has become an issue for you and you feel like you need to talk to someone, you have school counselors that you can contact to talk to. You may be able to confide this in your friends and family if you're feeling overwhelmed. You may want to mention it to a doctor or a therapist. But here's some good resources for you here with the crisis text line is available 24/7, and Talkspace and BetterHelp are both telehealth companies that can help you with managing your mental health as well. Okay, so after this seminar, you may be contacted to win another gift card. So you will be contacted by our student life coordinator, and you may hear from me as well. So those should be there in a couple of days. So you'll get one for coming, and then you'll get another if you interview with me later. Okay, so if you would, this last slide is a final survey. I want to see, what you learned. So try to scan that in, and I'm happy to post the code in the chat. But I know we did have a question earlier when we were talking about thank you notes, about writing a rough draft. So I would recommend, if you're going the handwritten thank you note route, to at least go ahead and address the envelope, but you don't necessarily have to write a rough draft, because again, you are wanting to put in that thank you note about a connection that you had through that engagement in the interview. So you want to just make sure that you are I'm trying to do two things at once, so I'm getting distracted. You don't have to write that rough draft up front, but try to address the envelope and have it ready to go with a stamp on it, so that the next day after the interview, you can write up your details, thanking them, and having your little connection detail in there as well. So you'll have to wait to complete that after the interview. Any other questions you all have about interviewing or anxiety? So please make sure that you finish the survey that's on the screen. If you can't get it to connect through your camera, I've posted a link for you. But thank you all for coming today, and I appreciate you and hope that you have an awesome day.